Hi everybody, welcome to Time Out. It's been an action-packed week at the high schools Kennedy and Jefferson, and an action-packed week also at Normandale Community College. We've got some great interviews tonight as we talk about gymnastics, we talk about wrestling at Kennedy High School, we talk with Coach Tom Soderdahl of the streaking Jaguar hockey team. We've got a lot of taped highlights to show you, and we're going to go right to the scoreboard right now, right to the BEC scoreboard and those taped highlights, so fasten your seatbelts and hang on. Let's just pray we can get through them all. It was a big week for the Jaguar hockey team. Last Saturday, they defeated fourth-ranked Burnsville 6-3, and that was on Burnsville's home ice. Last night, it was a different story as Jefferson's Mike Finnerty scored a pair of goals. There's his first one. I said it's a different story because Finnerty got the hat trick. You'll see him here with his second goal. In the Burnsville game, 6 different players scored, but Finnerty had a big night against Park this coming last night at the Ice Garden. Finally, this is Mark Brandt knocking in a shot that hit the pipe on a breakaway. That made it 8-0 last night against Park. Another notcher made it 9-0. And those fans at the Ice Garden last night got a real treat as they saw Jaguar hockey at its best and a lot of offensive firepower. The Jaguars have now won 4 in a row in 7 of their last 8 games. And let's just say that Tom Soderdahl's team is really on a roll. We'll have more with Coach Tom Soderdahl later on in the program. Story's not quite the same for Coach Jerry Peterson and the Kennedy Eagles. The Eagles lost their second in a row, 4-2 to Minnetonka last Saturday at the Ice Garden. Taking a look at some highlights there, one standout continues to be a standout this year, Danny Tuzano, there with a blast from the corner. That tied the game in the second period, but Minnetonka went on to notch 3 more goals. They finally won it 4-2. That dropped the Eagles to 1-3 in the Lake Conference South, and the Eagles are now 8-3 overall as they try and regroup. Of course, a big game this Saturday night at the Ice Garden between the Kennedy Eagles and Jefferson. Let's go to the hockey's top 10 now and take a look and see what we've got there. Hibbing and Hill Murray, Burnsville, the first 3, there'll be a change there with that victory by Jefferson over Burnsville. A very powerful Edina team is number 4, followed by Roseau, White Bear Lake, Denfield, Morgan Park, and 8, 9, and 10 are Cloquet, Kellogg, and Park Cottage Grove. Perhaps next week we might be seeing the Jaguars make a move into that top 10. Going now to basketball, men's basketball, 11-0. That's the record at Normandale Community College in the men's basketball program this year. The Lions remain undefeated and the top-ranked team in Region 13 competition. Ron Levincy's team defeated Golden Valley 86-67 on Saturday in Bloomington, and the big news about that one was it's the first time in the last 10 outings that Normandale was able to pull off a victory against Golden Valley. Here's some of the tape. We're seeing Steve Hill as he hits 2 of his 15 points. Hill also had 13 boards for the Lions to lead in that category. Stu Engen led Normandale in scoring with 19 points. The Lions hit 50% from the field and 90% from the line, and they showed again why they are the top-ranked team in Region 13. Again, Ron Levincy's team 11-0, and they beat Golden Valley. That was the first conference game for both teams, so they're certainly starting off on the right foot in conference play. The Lady Lions made it a clean sweep over Golden Valley with a 71-61 victory, and with some tape highlights of that game, we'll show you Julie David's squad and Beth Cohen opening the game with this layup right off the opening tip. Cohen went on to hit for 20 points. She's been alternating with Julie Thole for scoring honors recently. Thole led Normandale with 24 points against Golden Valley, and it looks like Julie David's club is putting those, getting those strong second halves that they've been wanting to pull off against the opposition, and they had a very fine 10-point margin of victory against the Golden Valley Royals. In girls high school hoops, Kennedy upped their record to 7-3 overall with a 41-40 victory over Minnetonka. Beth Page led the Lady Eagles with 14 points. And the Jefferson girls beat Minnetonka 42-28. We've got some highlights of this one. This game was played last Friday night at Jefferson, and we'll show you some action there with the Jaguars, Karen Amell, Ann Becken, and Doran Stuber all scoring for the Lady Jaguars. However, it was Shelley Hankey's night. She led Jefferson with 10 points, led the Jags in scoring, and now the Jags will travel to Burnsville, a very powerful Burnsville club, for a big game tomorrow night. Taking a look now at the girls' top 10 in basketball, we see that Durham Hall, Burnsville, Little Falls, New Prague, and New Ulm fill out the top 5, and then the bottom 5, Highland Park, Stillwater, Chaska, St. Louis Park, and Buffalo. In boys high school basketball, Jefferson remains undefeated, 10-0. They creamed Minnetonka 60-26. That was last Friday night. I think the amazing story there is the top scorer for the Jags was John Day. He had 11 points, so they are definitely getting a lot of balanced scoring out of that Jaguar attack, and Coach Jack Evans has certainly got his team moving. Again, undefeated, trying to keep pace with Ron Levense's team over at Normandale Community College. The boys' top 10 shows Jefferson ranked number 4th, Armstrong, North, and White Bear Lake 1 through 3. Edina just behind Jefferson, and the bottom 5, Blaine, Wilmer, Prior Lake, St. Paul Johnson, and St. Cloud Tech. And one noticeable absence from that top 10 are the Kennedy Eagles. Kennedy has only lost one game, that cliffhanger to Jefferson, and one wonders what the Eagles have to do to get into the top 10. In swimming, the Jefferson Jaguars had an outstanding outing in the Jefferson Invitational this past week. They came in 3rd, and Kennedy defeated Minnetonka in a dual meet. So congratulations to both the Eagles and to the Jaguars for outstanding performances. We go now to cross country. Jefferson with a couple big wins against Richfield and Hopkins. They are certainly one of the powers in the state. Kennedy split a pair with Lakeville and Prior Lake. Turning now to girls cross country. Again, the Jaguars on a roll, defeating Hopkins and Richfield, and Kennedy fell both times to Lakeville and to Prior Lake. Boys slalom skiing. Did Jefferson ever lose in skiing? I'm going to have to go back in the record books. They just keep on winning. They seem to own the slopes, and they defeated Blake and Cooper this past week. Come on, you got to be kidding. Are these scores for real? We must have a Jaguar running the scores tonight. They won some more. All right, that's enough. Let's go to wrestling. Kennedy over Jefferson, 31-12, a big match between the crosstown rivals. That'll give Kennedy bragging rights, at least for a while. We'll be talking with Coach Dave Aarons of Kennedy and a couple of his wrestlers later on in the show. Jefferson did have an outstanding performance as they finished 2nd at the Columbia Heights Invitational later on. And in gymnastics, another contest for bragging rights in the city of Bloomington. And Jefferson defeated Kennedy 136-127. Both teams had outstanding performances. It's enough scores for tonight. Let's let some other people do the talking. We left off in gymnastics. We did it intentionally because we have an opportunity to talk with the respective coaches of the girls gymnastics programs at the local schools, Kennedy High School and at Jefferson High School. Sue Germanson is here with us, and we're going to be talking also with Coach Gary Greening. But before we join those two, let's just touch one more moment on those people who are following Jaguar hockey. As we said, they are a team to watch right now in the state of Minnesota. They have won 8 of their last nine games, and of course they finished with a big 9-0 victory last night against St. Louis Park. And Scott Hansen of BEC TV had an opportunity to talk with Jaguar coach Tom Souterdalen after that game.
Our defense cleared the puck well.
Your team's been doing really good in the last few weeks or so, coming off some big wins against Burnsville and Richfield. How do you take a look at those games, and how do you look ahead for the rest of the season?
Well, I think we're really progressing. I knew we would come out slow, and we did. We had some losses earlier, and these guys had to get a chance to meet each other, know each other, feel each other out on the ice, gain some respect for each other, and I think they've done all of that. They are really a close-knit group of guys, and they really compete together, and that's what we like to see. As far as our wins, we were concerned a little bit about our lackadaisical play in the third periods in some of our games where we've had leads like over Blake or some of the teams, and we've let them off the hook and haven't put them away. And I guess the team guys got together and talked about, third period, and that's got to be our period. We kind of pride ourselves in being in great condition and able to skate very well. And in the Richfield game, I think it was kind of turned things around a little bit, or at least got us going a little bit in the third period where we got 3. But the big game was the Armstrong game, because Armstrong's just an excellent hockey team over at Armstrong. And we were down 4-2 with about 6 minutes left, and guys got together and just said, we're not going to quit, and really put it together and beat Armstrong 5-4 in regulation time, and did a good job. And then, of course, our win over Burnsville, and again, had a very strong third period. That was good, and tonight a very good third period.
What are your thoughts on the upcoming Kennedy game this week?
Well, I don't think there's any favorite, well, unless you want to pick Kennedy, but, anytime we played, it's usually a one-goal game. It was tie game, one-goal game last year, and Kennedy's got a very, very good club. Anytime you can put 6 people on the ice like Dallas Miller, John Reuter, Dan Tousineau, and then Bud Bergloff and Jeff Wenendi back on defense and have Jeff Meese in goal, you're going to have an excellent team. And, I don't know if we can match those guys, but we're going to come out and try to compete against them.
What about Edina?
I'm not even thinking about Edina.
Sure thing, Coach Sotterdalen. He does have 2 big contests coming up. That game with Kennedy is going to be a big one because it means so much to both teams. Obviously, Jefferson wants to maintain and keep its big winning streak going. This is a big opportunity for the Eagles coach Jerry Peterson to get on the rebound, regroup his team, and start regathering some of that strength that he had earlier in the year and hopefully head towards tournament time with a strong performance. Of course, let's not forget, Edina and Jefferson is going to be a great game. Anytime either Edina or rather Jefferson or Kennedy play the Hornets, it's always a big one. So 2 big meets coming up, 2 big games coming up for the Jefferson Jaguars, and we certainly wish them well in that. Let's turn to gymnastics. Somewhat prematurely introduced our guest, but we're going to formally introduce our guest to you now. Sue Germanson, the head girls gymnastics coach at Bloomington Kennedy, and Gary Greening, head girls gymnastics coach for the Jefferson Jaguars. And we want to thank both of you for joining us and bearing with us somewhat as we get through all those scores. I did notice up on the scoreboard as we read it off that you two had what talked about prior to the show was an outstanding performance on both your teams in the past meet that you two went up against each other. Greening gets bragging rights, at least as we've said for a while. But Sue, you felt that your girls team at Kennedy had a good meet. Tell us a little bit about it.
They did fantastic. They got the best score in the history of Kennedy girls gymnastics. Last year, at the end of the season, we were real lucky to score 120, and at the beginning of the season, we're scoring 127, so the girls were just thrilled with their performance.
This being the best performance in the history of the school, that's got to be then the highlight, I guess, of the program for Kennedy. What does it mean then? What does it really mean to the participants? Even though you lost, but you had your best performance, what does it mean to the rest of the year for you?
They know that they have potential now. We've been telling them that for the past, since last year, that they have a lot of potential and that they are good. And now with them scoring higher, I think it's helping with their self-concept and that they're realizing that they are a good gymnastics team.
What are the things that you've tried to accomplish? You've been there, been with Kennedy now for, 3 years in charge of the program. What are the ingredients that you've tried to put into that program in those 3 years?
I'd say the most important ones is commitment and dedication. And I tell the girls that they cannot become an athlete unless they're first committed and dedicated to the team and to the sport. And because of the commitment and dedication and hard work, that's why the whole program has gotten better, because they've committed themselves to the team, the school, and the rest of their teammates.
Well, I think if we talk about commitment in a program, we certainly, in addition to you, Jefferson's just been outstanding. Gary, you were on last week. As like you said before the show, you think we ought to be sending you a payroll check for being on here so much. But if you knew how much we were all working for, you'd know that there wasn't much. You're going to have to get at the bottom of the list for this one. But we talked a little bit about the fact you were top ranked, the number one team in the state. But at this point, last week you said you weren't sure, or you weren't too comfortable with that ranking. You felt there might be White Bear, I think, was a team you singled out. How do you feel now? How do you feel about your team?
Well, what I said last week has been borne out with the ratings this week. As I mentioned last week, that I felt that probably, based on our high finish last year and the fact that our first meet of the year was 133 or so, people kind of assumed that we belonged in the #1 spot without really having the opportunity to prove ourselves to be that good. And after some of the meets had happened, as it turned out, what I felt other people felt too, because this year's ratings, White Bear was 1, Eden Prairie was 2, and we were 3rd, and based on average score, that's about where we should be. So I think things are beginning, the dust is beginning to settle, and the different teams are beginning to kind of show where they're going to be, and of course there's always some movement. I would like to comment just one thing though. I would imagine that if you took all the teams in the state that haven't won a meet yet, Kennedy would win that tournament hands down. They're the best. They've got to be the best team in the state with an 0-2 record that I've ever seen. I mean, it's just turned out the schedule for them. It's just been really not a good draw, so to speak. They started with Edina, and then they had us, and they happened to catch us in a good year. And so I expect that we're going to see Kennedy in that top 10 before the year's over, because they're not that far behind the 10th place ranked team right now. So you may end up with two Bloomington schools in the top 10 before the season's over.
Well, I guess we're spoiled in Bloomington because we sort of get used to that. I think
Well,
we get a lot of teams from both schools of just
we get used to it.
Year.
We get used to it, maybe, but doggone, the kids work awfully hard to get there. The kids in this community, they make a commitment and they do the best they possibly can, and it shows in the wins and the records and the attitude and the whole demeanor that our kids in Bloomington project for Bloomington. It's just great.
Your recommendation then for Sue Germanson is just to hang loose and wait till some of those other teams aren't the so she gets some teams that aren't quite as strong as the team she's had to face. Just been a scheduling matter then.
Well, I feel
it's tough to start out that way.
Well, I feel Sue Germanson's got her act together. She does an excellent job at Kennedy, and I just feel they're going to end up in the top 10. I would hope that both of us would before the end of the season.
Let's talk a little bit about, you talked about the commitment in the community. Let's talk a little bit about where gymnastics is and some of the programs at the lower levels and where they are. Sue, can you give us some comments on your assessment of the programs? What's going on in the city of Bloomington in that area?
Well, to tell you the truth, the one to talk to probably is Gary. I just coach in the Bloomington district. I don't teach there, so I'm not real familiar with everything that's going on, but I know there are some private clubs that some younger girls are working out at. And that's where a lot of our gymnasts come from, or from the girls that have been working out since the age of 6, 7, or 8 years old. And then they come to us for the high school season, and that's one thing that does help build our program, is if we've had these girls that have been training since they've been younger. And with these clubs that are in the area, it helps keep our program up on top.
Gary, you probably do have something to add to that. Tell us a little bit first about your participation. Sue deferred that question, so we're going to let you finish.
Well, actually, there was a day when Jefferson, that I know for sure, and I think Kennedy was in a similar situation, where people would have rather not had Jefferson on their schedule because it wasn't worth their time. Now we've gotten to a point where people would rather not have Jefferson on their schedule because it's more than worth their time. And one of the reasons that's happening is we're beginning to get young ladies on our teams who in their early years took training at a club called the Bloomington Gymnastics Club. Now that Bloomington Gymnastics Club has been reorganized and under new management and is now operating as Minnesota Academy of Gymnastics. And as long as we can maintain that type of early training, the two schools will remain competitive with the other traditionally powerful teams in gymnastics, because that's the way the other teams got very good. It is virtually impossible to take a young lady who's, say, a 9th grader and will only work out during the gymnastics season for 4 years and produce a team that can score over 120 points. There just isn't enough time to achieve the skill level that's necessary. That's why our boys' team used to feel real good if we scored 115, and the girls' team used to feel good if we broke 100. But now that we have girls that have a higher skill level when they come in, we can expect but a higher level performance and therefore higher scores and a higher ranking as a result.
Let me throw this question out to both of you. One of the issues at the end of the boys' gymnastics season was the future of the gymnastics program in the high schools. The fact that it appeared that it was going to be dropped as a sport and would have to continue perhaps at a club level. You two are both involved in the gymnastics program. First of all, can you comment on where that boys issue is today and what the future might be for girls gymnastics? Either one of you that might have some insight into that.
I'll comment on the boys. You can take the girls too. Right now the boys program is in so-called committee. It's a recommendation in terms of whether they're going to retain the sport next year as a state-sanctioned sport in the State High School League Executive Council, which will meet the first weekend in March, and they'll be voting whether or not to retain it. What happens after they vote? Well, we'll have to wait and see what the vote turns out to be. But yes, at this moment, the future of boys gymnastics in Minnesota does seem to be in some jeopardy, but the final vote is not in, and we certainly aren't going to count us out until the vote is in.
Is it a dollar issue? Is that the question?
No, I don't think it's a dollar issue. There's a rule in the State High School League that says if a school drops, if 5% or fewer of the State High School League schools have the sport, then the State High School League is not obligated to continue sanctioning that sport. Now, that is true for gymnastics for boys. There are only like 15 schools now that have gymnastics for men, and so therefore under that rule they could vote no. On the other hand, they've already voted to drop the state tournament. So in terms of trophies and medals and judges' fees, they've already dropped that expense. And I really don't see any major expense if you just sanction a sport and let us go ahead and offer it. The big thing is we need the State High School League to sanction the sport so that the coaches will still be covered by the insurance, the liability insurance under the school. Mm-hmm. If they drop the sanctioning, then we're no longer covered, and I really don't know what coach is going to continue without adequate liability coverage.
Sue, quickly, what's going to happen to girls' gymnastics?
I think girls' gymnastics is fine right now. There are some schools that are dropping it, and it's more of, finances. But for the most part, it's staying fairly strong, and I think it'll be around for the next couple of years.
Good. Good. Let's turn to something maybe not as controversial, but something certainly as interesting for people who have seen gymnastics on TV or gone to it, and that's the manner of scoring in gymnastics. Gary Greening, we had an opportunity to visit Jefferson High School recently and take in one of your practices and sort of take in one of your lectures on how the process of scoring and then that issue is handled in that sport. So let's go now to Jefferson High School and Coach Gary Greening for an explanation.
To begin with, girls' gymnastics is composed of 4 events: vaulting, balance beam, uneven bars, and floor exercise. On each team, we have 5 girls that must be on it, and one of the girls has to be an all-rounder. The one thing, though, that seems to be the biggest problem for most people is that they do not understand the scoring that is going on in gymnastics, and particularly girls' gymnastics, since it's so subjective. Basically, we find that 3 of the events, all the events but vaulting, are based on a 10-point scoring system. A girl can receive 3.0 for difficulty. She gets 0.5 of a point for component parts, assuming that she has all the parts that she needs. She gets 2 points for combination and connections, 4 points for technical execution and amplitude. Now, technical execution and amplitude refer to straight knees, pointed toes, straight elbows, and so forth. And finally, to round out the total of 10.0, there is a 0.5 point general impression that the judges can use to arrive at a girl's total score. Now, generally speaking, in high school, scores of 9 to 9.5 are relatively rare and are usually reserved for those gymnasts who are very, very good at what they're doing. Generally, you will find high school scores with the good girls 8 to 9. Very often you will see scores in the 7 when you're dealing with the varsity level gymnasts. The judging is more subjective in girls' gymnastics than it is, for instance, in men's gymnastics, but it is important that all of these things be adhered to in any routine so that a girl does have a chance at a score of 10.0. Vaulting does not have a 10.0 maximum because different vaults are given different values. Only the most difficult vaults are awarded a 10.0 maximum. For example, a handspring with a front flip, a round off with a back flip right out of it, those are 10.0 vaults. Other vaults, depending upon their difficulty, have maximum scores that range down to approximately 7.8. So therefore, the vaulting is judged differently than the other events. At any rate, though, to judge gymnastics, it takes skill and practice. But as a spectator, if you'll just look mainly for good form and the right combinations without falls and without breaks, you'll probably have a pretty good idea of what the score is going to be before the judge ever puts it up.
In addition to having 2 of the best gymnastics team around, Bloomington is blessed this year with one of the top wrestling teams in the state of Minnesota, and that's the Bloomington Kennedy Eagles. And here joining us tonight is Coach Dave Ahrens of Kennedy and a couple of his wrestlers. Coach, first of all, why don't we introduce some of our guests?
This is co-captains Chris Glembeck and Dan Collins.
Coach, you've had an outstanding year so far. Why don't you bring us up to date on it and tell us your feelings about the progress of the team and where you're at today?
Well, we stand at 7-2 right now, which probably isn't very outstanding for what we've done in the past. And we'll have an opportunity to lose a couple more this year. Next week we have Apple Valley coming up, and the week after We have a duel with Faribault down at Faribault. And then the next day after Faribault, then we're in a big tournament at Apple Valley. So, and we could very well meet Apple Valley again. So
You've already met them once, have you not?
yes, we could possibly meet them 4 times this year.
Chris, you've got some tough ones coming up. How do you prepare for some of these, the big ones you've got ahead of you? You must be facing some really tough wrestlers.
Well, mainly when we got a tough match coming up, we work extra hard in practice. But basically, it's all the same from week to week.
Dan, we remarked when we had talked about wrestling a couple weeks ago that it's somewhat a team sport, but it remains very much an individual sport. Does the success of the team affect you at all in your personal performance on the mat?
Yeah, it does. I look at, as far as importance goes, the team is equal to individual, and you have to get mentally prepared for both as much as possible.
Coach, you said that this team maybe should be doing better, or doesn't, based upon past performances and tradition at Kennedy. Where does you feel it may not rank with some of the great teams, but certainly you've put together quite a tradition over there. What's been the key to your success? And let's not be modest about it. A lot of it is coaching, but how do you determine that? How do you judge that?
Well, I think the key to the success of any program is where you get good athletes to participate in the program. And I think that has been the key to our success at Kennedy, is to have to be fortunate enough to get the good athletes.
Who know how to watch their weight.
That too.
These guys good at that, I presume.
They do well.
Coach, we want to thank you and your wrestlers for joining us. And because of your performances of the past, and also because of the expectations that we have for the Eagles, and let's face it, they're kind of high because you guys are premier in your sport around here. We'd like to award you this week's BEC TV Team of the Week, and if you can stand and make it through our fanfare here, we're going to present that to you right now. And again, congratulations for joining us.
Thank you.
We wish you the best of luck in the future, and good luck, gentlemen. Quickly now, as we close out our show, we have about a minute and a half left, and we're going to finish up and talk a little bit and close out on the gymnastics note with Sue Germanson and Gary Greening. Sue, as you heard Gary at the beginning of the show, he thinks you've got a schedule coming up that's going to be conducive to some victories. How do you feel about the rest of the year?
I really don't want to think about wins and losses because you can never tell. Like tomorrow, I'm going to have one of my top gymnasts out because she's sick. So what we're just going to be going for is good scores for the team and personal bests.
Gary, are you going to have an opportunity to face some of those teams that right now are ahead of you in the rankings, or how does the rest of the schedule look to you? What are the tough ones going to be?
Well, we have Minnetonka tomorrow and Richfield next Thursday, but the real tough part of our schedule, I think, comes a week from Saturday. We go to Edina, the Edina Invitational, which is going to be like a state tournament. White Bear Lake is in there, Armstrong is in there, Washburn's in there, we're in there, Edina. It's going to be a real tournament. Then the following Thursday we have Edina in a dual meet, and then the Saturday after that we travel to Eden Prairie for the Eden Prairie Invitational, which is composed of 4 teams, and that is truly invitational. The only way you can invite it to that tournament is to be in the top 4 from the previous year. So Eden Prairie will be there, and the Rams will be there, which is a very good team. We'll be there, and Edina will be there again. We're going to see Edina 3 times in like 8 days.
As if we don't get to see enough of those people anyways. Well, we wish you all the best of luck, and we hope you get some people out there to see these meets, because women's gymnastics and girls gymnastics is really exciting and fun to watch. So if you have an opportunity to get out and see some of the fine squads here in Bloomington, please do so. We're out of time. Let's wrap it up, and thank you for joining us. Join us again next week for another edition of Time Out. Good night, everybody.